Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes, let people come in case they're coming from other meetings. We'll get things rolling in just a minute or two.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give it just another minute while we let a few more folks come in. Um, Looks like we're going to have a small crowd today, which means there's no excuse for us not to have a good conversation. Hopefully, everybody has the ability to come off of mute and even on camera. So feel free to chime in at any point. Right. Andrew, you ready to kick things off?
Ready if you are.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to our June collaboratorium session. It is certainly heating up outside, and glad to have you guys with us. This will be some housekeeping items. This will be our last collaboratorium session, but certainly not the last of our educational series. We are getting ourselves ready for the new fiscal year and getting a lot of new topics together that will be part of our rebranded Power Platform Master Series. So look forward to or rather look out for some invitations, some content that'll come out in the next couple of weeks for some new series. And as always, we try to do our polls throughout the session, as it tends to drive a lot of the conversation and the topics that we put together. These education series are for you guys, so feel free to provide any sort of commentary, feedback about what you're seeing today or any of the ones you've seen previously. And please take some time to participate in the polls, as again, it helps us with content for the future. So we'll kick things off by kind of doing a brief recap. I don't know who may or may not have had the opportunity to attend Microsoft Build earlier in the month, but there was a ton of announcements that came from it that we wanted to be able to highlight and address. Now, there's certainly a lot of things that came far beyond just items in the Power Platform, but being that this is the Collaboratorium, the series is designed just around the Power Platform itself. A lot of what we're going to show today was just some of the features that were presented around the Power Platform. So I think one of the at least personally exciting features to highlight is Copilot and Power Pages. I'm a big Power Pages advocate, and having Copilot in there has already been pretty awe-inspiring. A few new features to Power Virtual Agents and a couple of updates that were mentioned as well that we'll talk about. Some advancements in Power Apps that Andrew's going to go through concerning a catalog manager and a few other things. Some advancements as well in Power Automate, and then some new things to look at inside of Dataverse that really seem to accelerate app development and the entire really lifecycle process for a lot of these apps. Okay. So we'll kick things off with a lot of what we've seen with Power Pages so far. So most of us have already had the pleasure of seeing next gen AI in action, and really it's incredible. However, now that it's part of Power Pages, it is beginning to really transform the way customers construct and launch data-centric websites for their business. Copilot for Power Pages is currently in preview, and it allows users to enhance productivity and expedite the website building process by enabling them to generate text, create complex forms, contextual chatbots, and web page layouts. It even has the ability to design images and site themes for quick visual setup and customization. And all of this can be accomplished very quickly using natural language input and intelligent suggestions that come with Copilot. For form creation, users just describe the type of form they need, and Copilot will build it, all while generating the tables inside of Dataverse that are necessary, that make it really easy to edit, remove, add fields, all just using, again, natural language input that you're using and having a essentially a text conversation with Copilot. And all you have to do at the end of that is just enable and configure your table permissions. And just to mention it again, one-click activation in Power Virtual Agents has been added to Power Pages basically as a component, and it even adds a site URL to the Conversation Booster upon implementation, which means you can immediately begin asking questions of data that's already on your website or portal. The power to transform simple descriptions into text content not only completely slashes development time, but also puts customizability at your fingertips. You can adjust the message, the tone, the length of the message itself with simple clicks, and I'll be able to show this off here in a little while in a brief demo. And then you can refine the content created just by simply asking Copilot to do it. I think it's probably good to point out, and one of the things that was mentioned at Build that stuck with me was that we've got to remember that Copilot is a Copilot and not autopilot. And it's not designed to do all this for you. It's simply designed to really help accelerate a first draft, and then allow you, the human, to go in and really refine what your Copilot has created and stood up for you. And that drastically reduces the amount of time it takes to stand something like this up. You can simply, or rather, you can simplify the form building process using Copilot in Power Pages as well. You specify the form type, whether it's going to be a basic form or an advanced form, which is a multi-step form, and Copilot will auto-generate the tables in Dataverse. it creates the corresponding forms again in Dataverse. It creates the columns in Dataverse, and then you've got the flexibility to adjust, add, fine-tune fields using that natural language input with Copilot. And it's just a far more streamlined approach to form creation. The next slide, before I click it, the next slide is a quick marketing video that was shown at Build that really highlights these new features, makes it, again, it's a marketing video, so it looks nice and fancy, but we are going to get the opportunity to look at Copilot and Power Pages for a brief demonstration a little later as well.
Next generation AI in Power Pages is revolutionizing how you build and launch data-centric websites for your business. Instead of spending hours crafting and coding websites, you can use natural language and intelligent suggestions to speed up your website building process. Now with Copilot and Power Pages, you can generate text, build forms, activate chatbots, and enable site design in seconds, all through the power of AI using natural language commands. Start building today with the go-to low-code tool that will help your organization increase productivity and rapidly build websites your customers will love at scale. All securely managed on Microsoft Power Platform. Just think it, describe it, and Power Pages will help you build it.
Yeah, so pretty awesome. Like I said, it's available now in preview. So if you've got the opportunity to get out there and play with it, it's fantastic. And again, we'll look at it here in a bit, and I'll kind of explain some of those details. Okay, so on to Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agents has been out for a while, and we had the opportunity to see Copilot in preview over the past couple of months, and it was really mind-blowing with what it was capable of doing and just accelerating the ability to create chatbots using Power Virtual Agents. And so there's a few new features that are out there, a couple of updates. I think the one thing to point out is that Copilot for PVA is now in general availability. It's GA. Anybody can go out there and get it. It's now part of the Power Virtual Agent designer. PVA continues to really aid a lot of developers, though, in creating smart chatbots that take advantage of these AI capabilities. And one of the newest features is the ability for Power Virtual Agents to generate dialogue and complete actions by dynamically linking together user-provided tools without the need for manual authoring of conversational logic. This can be accomplished by using pre-built connectors, custom connectors, Power Automate flows, and any of the existing Power Virtual Agent topics or ones that you create. This new feature utilizes Azure OpenAI and a large language model and is capable of handling slot filling and entity extraction, which enables bots to fulfill requests that the author may not have anticipated at all. And as I transition to the next slide, it's worth pointing out that this particular feature right now is still in limited preview at the moment, and it does require you to sign up and get approved for access to the feature right now. Azure Conversational Language Understanding or CLU integration is now in preview, and it allows builders to bring custom language models to PVA using the conversational language understanding model. It includes dialogue triggering, the interruptions, did you mean suggestions, and slot filling. And builders can create and map CLU intents and entities to Power Virtual Agent topics, and then use them alongside PVA pre-built entries for for all supported languages out there. Conversation Booster has now expanded to include SharePoint and OneDrive URLs as well. And we've also now got the ability to include more than one URL. If you've had the pleasure of playing around with Conversation Booster or have seen some of our previous demos, you only could put one URL behind the site, and now you can add multiple. And probably, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this one, probably one of the most exciting features is that Copilot for PVA is now generally available. So, you know, get out there and start building bots alongside your Copilot. And lastly, there's also a new bot building authoring canvas that features event extensibility, the ability to create or generate rather rich responses using things like adaptive cards. And there's a new variable system that uses Power Effects, which makes things a lot easier, and at least doesn't segregate kind of some of those variable tools within the Power Platform. And there's a new code-like view that you can utilize. Okay, so I'm going to pause there real quick and ask, does anybody have any questions about some of these new features in PVA or Power Pages before I kind of jump into a brief demo? Nobody sees Chrome down here, does they? Give me a second. Andrew, I might need to hand it over to you. My browser seems to have shut down.
No worries.
Get it back
Yeah,
up.
I don't see Chrome at the bottom there. Yep, I'm happy to take over, and we can always check out
jump on in.
Jeff's. Yep, we can always check out your demonstration at the end. So
Yep.
let me go ahead and share my screen here. Yeah, and welcome everybody. Thanks again for your time. My name's Andrew Albertson. I'm a colleague of Jeff's here in the Power Platform team, the South OU. Today, like Jeff mentioned, I'm going to dive into some of the Power Platform features and previews that we heard about at Build Conference. And, you know, my topics are really going to focus on what we heard around Power Apps, Power Automate, and a couple of new things for our Dataverse pieces. And as we're jumping in here, two themes I kind of want to highlight, and I'll try to reiterate these as I'm going through, is I'll show advancements in Copilots when we see them in the products. So obviously we'll see that in Power Apps here in a minute, but also a lot of what we're showing is some pro dev features throughout these products. So I'll do my best to kind of differentiate between those two and which one's a little bit more pro dev. Sometimes I'll be jumping into a demo and I'll show you live stuff, what we're doing. Sometimes I might just be playing a video for us because, like I said, a lot of these things are in preview. So I either don't have access to them fully already, or they're just a little bit too in-depth, technical depth for this, and I don't want to take up the entire meeting with diving in. So let's go ahead and jump to the next screen. This is a video here, so most of the things all have a video in the PowerPoint. I'm actually going to jump over to a live demonstration for this, and I'm going to pull up my browser and jump into my Power Apps Copilot screen. So here, I'm still on the homepage in my demo environment. This is the new look and feel of Power Apps homepage. You can, I think, toggle this in your current environments if you want. I'm not sure if the Copilot feature will be there. My demo, there is a little bit of configuration setup needed to make sure all the Copilot features are available. Obviously, this environment has that, but there is a little bit of setup you must do before you can kind of get access to all of these in the preview modes. But the first thing I want to hone in on here is our Describe It to Design It feature. We've seen this throughout other applications in the Power Platform, and it's really going to do exactly what it sounds like. It's our Copilot way of getting us started from scratch and helping us use natural language to design our application, right? Our natural language is a great programming language if we can use it in that way. So you could really just type in anything you want here to get started. I'm going to use one of the examples for the sake of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and here and hit Manage Inspections, right? Pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. And right away, we're getting to creating our app and we see our Copilot functionality starting up here, right? And some of you might have seen this in other demonstrations, but this was part of the Build conference, highlighting some of the new functionalities, enhancements that we're able to do here. So I'll just, let's say, add 10 more rows, right? We can really utilize Copilot to get us started when really we don't know where to start with our app. And sometimes, what we've heard from makers is, it seems like a lot when I'm getting started, and that's really where Copilot comes in, is it helps us get off the ground, helps us get started, helps us with an idea, a template, or even a data structure we want to start with, right? So I can ask the Copilot to add things. I can ask it, say, add a column for account, right? And I can directly ask this AI feature to make changes to the table that it's creating in the background, right? So, of course, it created me a whole new table here, but I was actually looking for, let me start this one over again. Right, we'll do manage inspections. I don't think I typed in the word column, so it thought I wanted to look at a whole new table. And we'll just go ahead and push this through. But as you can see, you can type right into it. I'll say add a column this time. Add a field for account. See if we can be a little more specific. And this should update me a column on my table here. If I scroll over, right, it's creating me columns in this table, right? So from scratch there, I typed in what I wanted. It's going to build me a table in Dataverse, and it's also going to help me create an app just by clicking the button here. Why that's awesome is I got started, right? That's the biggest part about building apps is where do I start? So that's how we can use that describe it to design it feature. I'm going to go back to my home page here while that's loading here. Sometimes it takes a minute. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the other ways to get started, right? So I can also use my start with data. And why this is great, it's actually going to highlight on the next slide for me as well, is we can now use Excel documents to start an app here. And the big piece of that and what they announced new at Build was I can use structured and unstructured Excel documents to begin this app process. So I can click download from data, right? I have other ways in which I can connect to external data, but I can say upload from a file. And like many customers and companies out there, we're always trying to get out of Excel, right? We've built these huge, awesome documents sometimes in Excel, but how do I modernize that? How do I get it to an app to where my users can use it internally? This is that great way to get you started. I can take that clunky Excel file that I've been working in for years, I can drop it right in here, and Copilot's going to analyze that data and help me get started with the views I need, the tables I need, all that good stuff to get us off the ground. So I'm just going to use a simple file here because I don't have a gigantic Excel to utilize here. But as you can see, as this spins up, it's going to create my table, suggest how that app should look and feel when it starts. And I can also make some changes to it as needed. And when this is done spinning, you can see this slider over here on the right. You can use the first row as headers or not, because sometimes your document's not going to have that, right? So I can give it a heads up and say, I don't have headers in my document. I need to structure that later in my app building process. So we get this little notification over here, right? It created a table name, it did descriptions, it also determined data types for my fields, all of that just by uploading that Excel file. So that's really impressive, saving a lot of time and getting you started from what most likely will be a complex Excel document. So we'll give that a second. I think this should go pretty quickly. Right, and it's as it's pulling up here in my maker screen, it's already given me suggestions for how it thinks this app should look based on the data I had in my Excel file. So loading here still, bear with me, these demo environments are not the fastest in the world. But as you can see, right, my document was pretty basic, but it suggested a couple things. I've got a couple of containers already on here, right? I can see how things are moving. But it already created me a table, right? It already did some of the heavy lifting for me just by uploading an Excel document. So I'm not going to save this one. I'm just going to go back to the home page, right? So that was easy, starting with data. And then our other two options here we may have seen in the past, but it's got a little bit of a new look and feel. I can start from the page design, right? So I know I need a gallery. I know I need a navigation. I know, maybe I just want it to be split screen. So this is more of a conceptual design base of your app. You can also use Figma and remember pictures, actual drawings of pictures to get you started. And if I go back to my templates, this is actually templated apps that other people have built in Power Platform that you can scroll through and say, this actually looks pretty similar to what I need. I'll go ahead and hit the service desk one. It'll ask me to give it a name. And then I'm up and running from already created components, already created visuals, data structures, tables, all that great stuff, right? So a lot of great new features coming with these enhancements into Copilot for Power Apps. And once again, right, this might be 90% of what you wanted your app to already look like. You can now just come in, enhance that, connect it to the data sources that you need, and get off the ground and get running. So I'm actually going to jump back to our slides here. I'm going to go back to our homepage before we start there. All right, so back on our slides here, right? We went over some of those enhancements. Once again, that's a video there. If I click to my next slide, this is another video that's highlighting that unstructured Excel files import and create an app with, right? So instead of watching that, we kind of went through it a little bit, but this is a video kind of leave behind for you guys so you can go back and see how that walkthrough happens. So if we keep going through, Copilot Control. So now this is a really cool new feature that was announced at Build. And as you can see on the screen here, it's an awesome feature that's going to allow us to drop a Copilot control inside of the apps we're building. So I'm going to jump back over to a click through that I have for you guys. And we can see this from the beginning. So this is just kind of the, oops, looks like I didn't start it over. This is from the beginning, right? So once again, there's a little bit of setup that's involved to making sure this preview is available for you. We're making some assumptions that this is already set up for you. But once that's available, all you really need to do is open up the app that you're working on here. As we see in the background, we've got an example app of a product list inside of our company. If you know where it is, right, you can jump to the input section here and pull up the Copilot preview. You can also use this search box up here. You just type in Copilot. That'll get you to your Copilot component, and then we can drop that right on the app. From there, we're actually going to connect it to the data source that's already in my application. So in this example, I've got a product list with prices. I can say, yes, I want my Copilot to look at this table in order for my user to ask questions against it. So as you can see here, I've got my Copilot control now looking on my app. Now I'm going to select the fields that I also want Copilot to hone in on when my users are asking questions inside of the application. So here I'm just going to add description and currency because I want to focus on those as well, outside of the other ones that are in there, which is product model, name, created on, all that good stuff. Right, so now my Copilot component's ready to go. It's set up for how I want it. It's looking at the data source I need, and now we can preview that application and how it's going to work and look like from the user's perspective. So we can ask a question, and remember, this is from the perspective of your users operating the app. What color does the Sport Helmet 100 come in? Why this is important is a lot of times your users are coming in here, and yes, I can see the list over here, but I actually want to ask contextual information around the data that's in the app. This is a good example, right? What colors does it come in? Copilot's going to respond with black, blue, and red. As you can see on the left, it's getting those from my data list in the background, right? So I can keep asking questions, right? Those are the important parts of this component inside of Power Apps, right? This is just looking at a products list, but you can point it to any one of your Dataverse tables and help your users get to the information they're looking for within their applications. So Copilot is not only helping us build applications, but then also helping our users find the information they need inside of those applications. So really, really cool stuff there. It's really impressive new feature for us inside of Power Apps. So let me minimize this, right? So this also a video of the Copilot control. You can watch that from here. I like that click through a little bit better, but this video is a leave behind for you guys to walk through and see how that's done as well. And as well, the click through that we just looked at, that sort of walked you through how to actually get it on a page, whereas this is just kind of showing you from the front end how it's going to operate. All right, so application descriptions. This is now starting to get into some of those pro dev features that were released at Build. And to give a little background on this, if you're using pipelines inside of Power Platform, pipelines are a way to move solutions through our environments in Power Platform. And a part of that and some of the feedback we got from our users is adding descriptions to all the different components in a solution when they're moving through the environments can be very tiresome, right? A developer who's adding those descriptions has to go into each one of those pieces, and I'm actually going to click this video here, and actually describe what's happening in each one of those components and the solution as a whole. So taking that feedback, the second part of that is makers also, right? A dev moves that through an environment. I'm just going to speed this guy up a little bit. Right, a dev moves that through an environment. He's using pipelines to move it from, let's say, development to test. The maker that picks that up, right, when they look at that solution, they've also got to dive into each one of those components to see what's happening inside of that application that's coming their way. So we added Copilot inside of the pipelines tool set here, and we'll give this a little time to catch up. But basically what it's going to do is it's going to analyze all the things in this solution and then provide a summarized description of what's in there. And your developer will still have the ability to go in there and make any edits, but it's going to save them a lot of time here in the developer notes of what's already in their solution. So they can just accept what Copilot has generated and then make changes to as needed. So, right, as you can see there, it went through the developer solution. It said, I found a model-driven app, I found a sitemap, I found a Canvas app. It gave a little description to it. You can then click that apply button to put it in the deploy notes and make changes to it as necessary. So this really streamlines and saves time for the developer, as well as the person that's waiting for the solution and is going to implement it into their environments. So pretty cool feature there, utilizing Copilot just to save us time moving things through our environments. All right, on to our next feature here. Catalog Manager. So Catalog Manager is once again one of those pro dev features coming for Power Apps. And I'm going to take a little step back on this because it's probably the more technical of all of them. But in essence, Catalog Manager is a way for developers to create reusable building blocks within the Power Platform organization. Why that's important is there are organizations out there that need more compliance around the things that are made available in the Power Platform, especially when people are building apps and automations that, you know, go out to connectors and do a lot of things within the organization. Catalog Manager gives us a physical place to deploy new developed code for the Power Platform, approve it, and then allow makers to grab that and pull it into their environments. Another important part of that is an example we hear a lot from customers is, hey, I've got one developer that builds this really cool stuff. People want to use that, but there's a lot of in between of giving access to that code, making sure people have rights to it in their environments. Catalog Manager gives us a way to build, approve, put it in the catalog so that then users can then go take from it and pull it into their environments easily. So that's the very high level of that. Both of these are videos, by the way. There's actually a third one that gets a little more technical at the end. But on the left here is actually a demonstration of a developer building in Visual Studio, building these PCF components or pieces they want to make available to the platform. And then what you see on the right is what gets installed into Power Platform so that we can all see what's been deployed, what's been approved, what's waiting to be approved, and what we can pull into our own environments. So it's a great, great tool that we can add to our application lifecycle management resources that help us control what's going into our organization and then what's moved to the other environments within our tenants. So that's pretty high level, and it does get pretty technical on how you submit. Don't worry, all the stuff we're showing here today, we will provide resources for, links for, so that you can get to the documentation and see these videos that we've left behind. There goes my videos. So before I move into Power Automate, I'll stop there for any questions if anybody wants to come off mute and ask any questions around the Power Apps functionalities we saw there. All right. If you do have any questions, once again, throw them in the chat. If my colleagues don't get to them, we'll definitely get to them after the meeting's over. So with that, we'll jump into Power Automate. And first here, right, we are going to see some of the enhancements to Copilot, and then we'll also talk about some new features, and they're more dev related, being released through Power Automate. So I'm just going to use a click through for this. I do have a live environment to show this, but for the sake of time, this will kind of help us move through. But if you want to see any of this stuff at the end, we can also jump into that. As you saw when we started there, right, in Power Automate, we used, once again, the Describe It to Design It feature in Power Automate. That allowed me to say, when someone responds to forms, reply in an email, right? It pulled in the triggers and the actions that I needed to get this flow started. As we continue on here, right, it's going to do our authentication there on that first screen, and now it's jumping us into our new Canvas designer for building flows. So a couple things that are being shown here right away that are awesome to me as somebody that's been building in Flow for a while. One, the parameter screen popping up here on the left. I can't tell you how many times I've clicked into the wrong thing or got really annoyed by trying to click into one field and getting that, dynamic content window to pop up on my flow. We're now popping that all out to the left. You can see where you can enter in parameters, settings, you have a code view, and some additional testing capabilities there. And I think a little bit more of a user-friendly way in which to view for each action and trigger and step. As well as when I don't know if you noticed when you first started, and we'll see it here in a minute, the canvas actually allows you to move around way more efficiently on your flow. If, like me, you have built flows in the past with 10 different if-then statements, they've become very big and very expanded. And all you could do is kind of like zoom in or out on your browser or scroll over left and right. You can now drag and drop your way around the canvas. You can zoom in, you can center it, and you can actually click on a piece of the page that you want to focus on. So I think we'll see that a little bit more here as well. As well as another feature that the Copilot inside of Power Automate has come to do is it's actually getting better at knowing which responses you need in the parameters. So based on what I typed in the beginning, right, I need a form that takes the response from here and then sends an email. As we continue this click through here, and I think it's going to click down in here. Actually, it might move to the next step. But the next steps know that I need the response from my get response details to land in my send an email action, right? So Copilot's getting better about auto putting that stuff in there. And then as we saw in here, right, I typed in before the send an email, add a condition. We're seeing the Copilot in action, right? So it add a condition. Now I'm saying under the true condition, add an action to the message in Teams. So it's doing a lot of this heavy lifting for me. And all I'm doing is typing in these questions or describing something here on the right, and it's writing it for me. So this Copilot right here on the side of you is really going to help you not only find the resources you need, but actually physically build the flow for you, which speeds up your availability to do this, right? To move quickly. And jumping back, right, if you saw that there for a second, you can see how they're doing the click and drag and drop over here. Here are the buttons I was talking about. You can zoom in and out of each section. You can center it on the screen or use the little map to jump to a certain part. And if you guys want to see that at the end, I can open up in my environment. We can kind of play around in there for a little bit as well. So as I continue to click through here, right, we're just walking through some of the parameters, but I can also ask Copilot to help me fill in spots in my actual actions, right? So as this catches up here and I've got my 2 in there, I can go back to Copilot and say, I want you to fill in this body with attending the event and let them know an event is organized or may follow up in the next few days, right? I can type in what I want it to do and it can actually go in and make sure it's formatted correctly in my body, right? So as you see, when they enter this in here into the Copilot, it's going to go do some updates into my send email parameter here. And when they come back in, it's actually formatted in the correct way in which a body should be. I don't know about you, but when I first started building Flow, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the formatting and correct things for all these different triggers and actions so they didn't look terrible when they actually arrived in people's inboxes. Copilot's helping you do that. And all you did was describe what you wanted there. So it really filled in a lot of great things for you. All right, custom actions. So the next two things in Power Automate are both a little bit more dev focused. I actually don't have any, actually the next one's a GIF, but I don't have a whole lot to physically show you in my environment. So we'll jump into custom actions. And I think the next one is just a screenshot. I could be wrong because misremembering that. So custom actions, if you are familiar with RPA and desktop flows, custom actions give you the ability in Visual Studio to build custom code snippets that you can then call into your RPA actions. And that does that using this asset library, where I can go build out something in Visual Studio and then essentially publish it into my RPA actions list here so that I can use that over and over again in my RPAs, right? Or even if I just want to have one that I'm going to use other, right? I build something I know I'm going to use in every desktop flow that I use. Maybe it's something particular to my company. Custom actions allows you to do that and allows you to manage those things using the asset library here. So very cool, at least streamlining and help you get up and scale your automations quicker. And also, using this asset library, other makers building automations can use your custom actions as well. All right, on to the next one. So work queues. This is in preview mode. Actually, a lot of these things are in preview. So this is the one I only have a screenshot for. But the idea of work queues is when we have automations running, and sometimes our automations are complex situations, they might have multiple pieces of automations running. We can use work queues to manage those resources and almost chain them so that one runs in order of the other. So one example would be, let's imagine I have a supply chain automation process that exists out there. A lot of moving pieces to that, but I cannot have step 3 fire before step 2. And I know step 2 is going to take most of the time, right? So I can use work queues to manage and organize the resources that are the automation resources that are being used towards that. And I can also use that to throw more automation, if it's bots or actual processing capacity, towards those automations. So I know this is a very high level explanation of this, but it's going to work great if anybody's dabbled in hosted machines. So our hosted RPA machines in the cloud, where Microsoft takes care of all of the processing for RPA automations, you can then use work queues to schedule and make sure that the right steps are getting the most resources at the right time. So that's kind of a high level of work queues, but that is the general idea of them and what they're going to be able to help you do in the future. All right, so any questions there before I move on to some of the Dataverse tool new features that we saw build? All right, once again, throw those questions into the chat. We will get you answers. And I can't see the chat right now, so if they are popping up in there, I will get to them after my piece here. So moving on to Dataverse. Oh, yep.
Yeah. No, I was saying we've been fielding them for you. There's been a few questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, and once again, if the guys, I'm sure they're knocking them out, I will circle back on all of them as I kind of jump out of this presentation mode. So Dataverse, I want to highlight 2. There was a couple more, but very little to actually find on them, just kind of some basic documentation. So I'm going to highlight 2 things I think really apply to the Power Platform folks on the call. The first one being Dataverse plugins. So if any of you in the past are familiar with writing plugins for Dynamics on-premise or in the cloud as well, right? Plugins gave us the ability to extend the applications using .NET, right? When I needed to do something a little bit more intricate than a workflow, and I needed instant reaction on the page, right? So I think of it back in the day as we used to write plugins for CRM, right? And I wanted to expand when I expanded a grid on a form, I needed to go do X, Y, and Z calculations right away, right? And I needed that processing time to be a little bit more cleaner and faster. That's how I used to use plugins. And that's how we're also introducing those into the Power Platform. So another good example of how plugins can get utilized is if you think about the stored procedures that you use in SQL. Plugins is a way that you can recreate those stored procedures inside of the Power Platform and then call them into your applications, into your flows where necessary. So when you do sign up for this preview feature, it is going to install a model-driven app called Dataverse Accelerator app. And this is where you'll really launch building those plugins and manage those as well. As you can see, they do have some basic samples already included in this app. So I recommend installing it and playing around with it. And you can do kind of like the old school plugins. You can do instant plugins and automated ones in the background, right, for a little bit more performance heavy tasks. So Dataverse plugins, very cool. I'm excited to get in there and mess around with them. I'm really excited to see how those work with apps and see the functionality that we can extend with Dataverse plugins to the rest of the environment. And last but surely not least, kind of keeping on our SQL theme here, we also now have a web-based SQL editor that you can install into Power Platform that gives you more of a SQL table editing experience in the Dataverse tables. So if your makers or your developers are more familiar with creating tables that way, they can install this web-based editor and it's going to give them a look and feel of a SQL table editor inside of Power Apps. And I thought that was just really great because obviously a lot of people come from that SQL background, even from a developer or a maker side of things. And this gives them a little bit, kind of gives them a place in between to write in what they're familiar with, but also in the context of Power Platform and Power Apps, as you can see in the screen here. So with that, that is kind of the end of my spiel. Maybe, Jeff, if you're ready to jump back on, we'll save the review for the end, and I'll let you kind of show you the PVA part that we missed earlier.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry about that. Literally, as everything got going, Chrome decides to shut itself down.
That was good.
So always demo demons. So what I've got in front of us is Power Pages, and this what we're seeing is the Design Studio, and there's a few new things that are incorporated or where Copilot gets incorporated into Power Pages now. So one of the first bits is, in my presentation, we were talking about the ability to generate text, and we can already begin to recognize the Copilot logo there with some of this text. Now, this Pages site is 100% out of the box, spun it up as just a demo. So everything in here is generic, but it gives me an opportunity to kind of start and rewrite a lot of stuff. So using the generic, copywritten text that's there, I can start by rewriting it, and this will at least give me some new content to work with. If I don't like it, I can hit rewrite again. Maybe I want to change the tone a little bit, and we'll make it friendly instead. Or maybe instead we'll do conversational, and we can make it longer. And then once I'm satisfied essentially with what's come out of it, I can add to the page, and immediately that content, that generated text, takes what was already there or just a little bit of something that I've input through, natural language text, and I can get something out of it like this. Again, content here is generic, but I think you get the idea of how powerful something like that really is. We've also got Copilot can now create new forms that we can add to the page. I mean, and it's as simple as saying I want to create a form, and it immediately open up and give us access to Copilot. So earlier today, I was messing around with it, and I clicked one of the options to kind of that are defaulted here, and it took the opportunity to set up the Dataverse table itself. It built the assumed columns that it needed for that table to be relevant to the product returns form that it was creating. It created the actual web-facing form itself, and then it positioned it to me like this. So, I mean, that took 20, 30 seconds or so. And again, it created the data structure in Dataverse and a form and the fields and spits it all out and says, is there anything else that you want to do? So I can, I can change, using natural language, remove the phone number if I wanted to, or take other things out of here, add in additional fields, or completely start myself all over. But this one looks good, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. And really all that happens at this point, once the form itself gets embedded onto the page, all I have to do now is the entity permissions are already going, or the table permissions are already going to be enabled. So it's just a matter of me going in there and configuring those, adding my my web roles, adding my configuration as far as whether they've got read-write access and things like that. So let me give it another second to see if it'll load on here. Otherwise, we'll check out some of the stuff inside of Power Virtual Agents. All right, we'll come back to it. So PVA now has the new ability, as I was mentioning earlier, to actually add a chat bot directly to your website as a component. Previously, when we had before the iteration of Power Pages, it was Power Apps portals, and there was the ability to actually add the Power Virtual Agent in as a component on the page itself. When Power Pages came around, that sort of went away as a feature. There was ways to get around it. You could kind of add it in as an iframe and other ways. But they've now officially added it back in, where it's a matter of me just simply selecting a checkbox and creating a chat bot from here. Now, as soon as I toggle the switch, the chat bot starts to get created. So it doesn't give me an option, at least not at this point. Again, this is a preview feature. It doesn't give me an option at this point to select an existing chat bot and pull it in here, but I can create the chat bot directly from Power Pages. So it'll spin up our chat bot for us. And one of the first features that it does is it will pull the web address in for the portal itself and puts it into Conversation Booster. And the big benefit of that is that I can now, as a user, immediately begin asking questions to my chat bot that will have answers that are found directly on the website already. So it immediately becomes productive the second I toggle that switch and turn it on and publish it to the page. One of the other new features is now we can add multiple sites in as well. So not only did I've by default I'm turned on and I can ask questions of my own website, but I can add other ones as well. And in this case, I tried to be as disparate as I could. So two completely different brands here with Holiday Inn and Papa John's, and yet I'm pointed directly to them, and I can already start asking questions. So, do you have any resorts in Texas? And again, this is going to be using Azure OpenAI. It's going to take a look at holidayinclub.com and come back with some resorts. Now, again, these are going to be direct links that are going to click me out and with the URL there and allow me to open up another window or tab to go directly to the website itself. But let's ask it a completely different question. Tell me about your stuffed crust pizza. So let's see if we can get it to hit Papa John's now. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't. When I was testing this earlier today, it did come back with a nice recipe around what was in the stuffed crust. But again, dealing with preview capabilities, sometimes we still hit some hiccups. We'll give it one more shot for the sake of time. But again, the big idea here is that I can now point it to multiple sources. Something that's coming up soon is the ability to pull in PDF documents or Word documents that I can use as reference. So think about knowledge base articles that can be put here, and immediately I can start asking questions of it as well. A few more features that are coming, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get access to the limited preview to be able to show this off, but something that I had mentioned earlier in my slides where we can use the Azure OpenAI conversation engine to piece together a bunch of different plugins to complete tasks. So this is where it really begins to become a very comprehensive and robust tool. Okay, so before I end, I'll kind of pause and ask if anybody's got any additional questions. We'll kind of jump back as well and take a look at the form that got set up on our Power page. But does anybody have any questions about what you've seen, about some of the new capabilities in the Power Platform that were announced at Build, or generally some feedback about what Microsoft is doing with Copilot and generative AI? Well, with that, I appreciate everybody's time today. Hopefully you found this news pretty exciting. If you weren't able to catch it at Build, I will be consolidating both this session was recorded, so I will be consolidating both the recording, the slides that Andrew and I shared, some of the videos. There's a lot of links available as well from actual content and breakout sessions that were recorded at Microsoft Build that I'll pull together and send along to you guys. Feel free to distribute as well. Nobody will have to request access, so feel free to distribute the link for that. Otherwise, everybody stay cool out there and enjoy your summer.
Yeah, and just before we go, Jerome, I saw you had raised your hand. I don't know if the question got answered right there with
No.
Jeff's response, but
No, I just had a quick question. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
for some reason, I can't seem to enable Copilot at all. Is it just in the Power Platform Admin Center under the tenant settings? And it's that the only one I see is the Canvas app Copilot preview.
okay, yeah, there are a couple of different settings you need to kind of move between depending on what you're trying to see. I'll make sure I specify that. I'll put those instructions too as well in any of our follow-up documents, and I'll tag you on that in this chat so you'll kind of get right to it.
Yeah, thank you. Because the Power Automate one looked.
Yep,
Really,
I'll make
really
sure I
fun.
that one specifically. So yeah, it's cool stuff, man. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your time.